the beginning of the day. Ay, ay. Especially when I have some coffee. Hey, what do you like to do as soon as you wake up? Tell me. Oh, that's great. But guys, I have to solve that equation. I'm ready. I took some time to think, and I think I have the answer. So let's solve this together. Ay, ay, what a beautiful day! Yes. Well, wait a minute. Look with your eyes. Somebody came here and solved the problem. Oh my! How this happened? Tell me. Option A. I needed a break, so my brain relaxed and solved. Option B. Someone came in and solved the problem. Or option C. The elves came and solved it. Ooh, that's incredible! And obvious is this answer. Well, now that we saw that someone solved my problem, what do you think if we come back to this story and try to solve the shoemaker's problem? It's not a real problem, but who made those shoes? Let's go! If you don't remember the first part, let me tell you, the shoemaker and his wife were very poor. But suddenly, from nowhere, someone made shoes for them, and they were perfect shoes. But who was the person who made the shoes? Let's try to discover. Come on. Okay. One evening, not long before Christmas, when the shoemaker had finished cutting out shoes, he went to his wife. "We still do not know who sews the shoes for us," he said. "Shall we stay up tonight to see who it is that helps us?" His wife thought that this was a very good idea, so she lit a candle and they went into the workshop. They hid themselves in a corner of the room. Then the shoemaker and his wife waited quietly and watched to see what would happen. For a long time, nothing happened. Then, just as the clock struck midnight, the door of the workshop opened quietly. In came two tiny elves. They were dressed in old clothes and their feet were bare. They did not see the shoemaker and his wife, who were hiding in the corner, watching them. The elves jumped onto the workbench and took up the shoes that were cut out. They began to stitch and sew and hammer. They worked so neatly and so quietly that the shoemaker could not hardly believe his eyes. The elves did not stop for a moment until all the cut-out shoes were finished. Then they ran quickly away. The next morning at breakfast, the shoemaker asked his wife, "How can we thank these little elves who have made us so rich and so happy?" "I know what we can do," said his wife. "We can make them new clothes and shoes. Their own clothes are ragged and their feet are bare." But that's a great idea! So they are going to think those who help them. And you, how do you think people around you? Tell me. One thing I do is I always hug them. And do you? Do you hug people? You give a smile, a pat on the back? What do you do? During the evenings that followed, the shoemaker and his wife began to make new clothes for the elves. The shoemaker chose the softest leather he could find. He cut out 2 of the tiniest pairs of shoes ever seen. Then he stitched the shoes as carefully as he could. They are so small. The shoemaker's wife cut out 2 white shirts, 2 small green jackets, and 2 pairs of trousers to match. She sewed them with tiny stitches. She made 2 little caps, each with a feather in it. She also knitted 2 pairs of tiny white stockings. Wow, they are so beautiful, these clothes. By Christmas Eve, the tiny shoes and clothes were finished. The shoemaker cleared the leather and the tools from his workbench. He and his wife laid their presents on the bench instead of the usual work. Then they hid themselves as they had done before and waited to see what the elves would do. Oh, I love those clothes. Just as the clock struck midnight, the door opened quietly as before. The 2 elves came running in. They still wore old clothes and their feet were blue with cold. Ooh. They jumped onto the bench, ready to get to work at once. But there was no leather on the bench, only the tiny clothes. The elves were astonished at first, and they were delighted. In no time at all, they were out of their old clothes. Then they dressed themselves in the beautiful new clothes. The green jackets and trousers, the white shirts and stockings, the soft leather shoe and little caps with the feathers that nodded as they laughed. Then they joined their hands and danced around, singing, "Now we are boys so fun to see, we need no longer cobblers be." At last, they danced happily out of the door. The shoemaker and his wife never saw the little elves again. But from that time, good luck was always with them. They were rich and happy for the rest of their lives. Wow, what an amazing book! Guys, tell me, did you like this story? What did you like the most? So, the elves made all those shoes. Maybe the elves solved my problem. I don't know. But one thing I know. Once I relaxed, the next day I had everything solved. The same thing as the shoemaker. So if you have a problem, why don't you relax and come back next day, huh? See you in the next story, guys. See you later, alligator.